American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tellustrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast. Today is December 13th, 2020. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, with my co-host, Robert Parker. We're going to break down all this weekend's action in college football. Rob, we've been starting out all of our college football podcasts in 2020 with the canceled and postponed games. Yeah, this weekend we got UAB, Middle Tennessee State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, Tulsa, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Purdue, Indiana, Texas, Kansas, Ohio, Kent State, Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green, Incarnate Word, Arkansas State, Cal, Washington State, Washington, Oregon, Utah State, Colorado State, and Charlotte at Marshall. Big news on the agenda that I left off there that we'll get to right now. Michigan at Ohio State. I tell you, I grew up watching this game. This is a staple in my year. It's a rivalry game that I have deep appreciation for. I know there's lots of jokes about the game now, but guess what? When I was a kid, there's lots of jokes about this game because Michigan was winning every single year growing up in the 90s. And they used to always say, oh, you got to have wins on both sides for it to be a rivalry. And it switched when Tressel got in there, and Ohio State's absolutely dominated it over the course. We're going on 2 decades now of Ohio State dominance, but it's still, you see those two helmets, you see those jerseys get together. I can't believe we're not going to see it this year. And although it's been awesome what college football's accomplished this year, stunning that we're not going to have a game like Ohio State, Michigan. Not stunning in the sense that games have been canceled all year, but like it hasn't fully sank in for me that I'm not going to get to watch Michigan play Ohio State this year.
Yeah, that was a pretty tough pill to swallow this weekend, where it's no Ohio State, Michigan because of the cancellation, Nick. But once again, we had some great games this past weekend.
We did.
You know, once again, the tradition still standing with the Army-Navy game. So I know we're going to talk about that later in this segment. But tradition was kind of still there this weekend with the, USC UCLA game, the Army Navy game, and we had a couple good games that we're going to definitely dive into. But just like you said, that Ohio State Michigan game is definitely a staple that everyone has circled on their schedule, whether you're an Ohio State fan or a Michigan fan. If you're a fan of college football, that's one game that you're definitely circling on your schedule year in and year out. So it was definitely, it hurt to not see that game go on, but we all know why. And that just kind of seemed like, what's been happening week in and week out with all the cancellation games. But yeah, so that's just my take on that one.
Bummed out for Cincinnati that they didn't get to take the field this week. Clearly it hurt. It's been hurting them in the eyes of the committee by not playing. I don't know if the same effect is going to be had on Texas A&M though. Texas didn't play this week, but the big news out of Austin, Tom Herman's going to return for another year. We've been talking about it all year. It's nice to say you want another coach, but Tom Herman is not a terrible coach. Rob, I got a question for you. How many years did it take Mac Brown to win a Big 12 title while he was at Texas?
It definitely took him a while. I mean, from what I recall, that Texas program, it has tradition back in the day, but if you just look at that Texas program, it has spurts where they're not good for long periods of time. So I know the last, if I can remember, the last national championship that they won is with Vince Young and those guys. So it's been a while for Texas. But I tell you what, Tom Herman is a great coach, just like you mentioned. They have the talent within the state of Texas to get the job done. And, their biggest rival is Oklahoma. So it gets down to that same, Ohio State Michigan rivalry where you kind of have to knock off your rivalry, at least every other year. And if you don't, then it's kind of a fail for that particular year. But I think Tom Herman rides the ship and he gets the guys that he wants to get in. And, they actually start winning some of those Big 12 titles.
So I in my head thought that Mac Brown had won at least one Big 10 title or Big 12 title before that national championship season in 2005. But no, he hadn't. And part of the problem was, you talk about the rivalry aspect. Like just after he arrived, a fellow by the name of Bob Stoops arrived in Norman, Oklahoma, and they took off. Oklahoma took off. They won a national title. Oklahoma dominated that early stretch. Mac Brown couldn't get past Oklahoma in those early days. So you're looking at, it was the fourth, seventh, eighth year of Mac Brown before they won. In year 8 is when he finally won a conference title in Austin, Texas. And by the way, before that, 9-3, 9-5, 9-3, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3, and 11-1 before his 13-0 season. So it's not like he was putting bad work on the field. The guy was constantly in the top 10 or top 5 college football throughout that stretch, but took him a long time to win a Big 12 title. So we haven't seen it fall into place for Tom Herman yet. Doesn't mean he's not on the track to get it done at some point. I know you got crazy money at Texas and you expect it every year, but I don't know, be realistic a little bit too. So I'm glad they're going to give him another year. I just hope it's not a type of thing where he's just like, essentially just a lame duck head coach, and it doesn't work out for him on the recruiting trail. I hope he catches a break and has a good season next year at Texas. Rooting for the guy. But let's go on to the games that were actually played this weekend. On Thursday night, we had FAU fall to Southern Miss 45-31. Pitt 34, Georgia Tech 20. The only reason I'm going to bring this game up to you, Rob, how about that handshake by Jeff Collins at the end of the game with Pat Narduzzi? Kind of good old walk away, rip the hand out of the handshake grip. People were trying to compare it to Harbaugh, but it was aggressively passive aggressive, I guess you could call it.
It was, and I know I saw some reports came out on Twitter and just social media just joking. They said it was kind of like a COVID handshake, quick and strong. But I tell you what, that was definitely the highlight of that game.
Yeah.
But I don't know what happened in between that game. I really didn't tune in too much, but I did see that within the highlights. That was definitely the highlight of that particular game.
Yeah, that's really the only thing I had worth mentioning from that game too. Friday, December 11th, you had North Texas take down UTEP 45-43, Arizona State 70, Arizona 7. Whew. We've talked about Arizona not playing good football this year, and maybe it's time for Kevin Sumlin to move on. They decided to move on from Kevin Sumlin at this point. 70-70, your in-state rival. Not pretty, not good. I'm trying to think of a direction you go if you're Arizona. To me, it feels like this is a ground up rebuild, and everyone snickered a few years ago when they hired Herm Edwards. And I can't think of a coach. I'm of all the disappointing things of 2020, not getting to see Arizona State play out a full season in 2020. That was a tough opener to go into USC. I know they blew that game, but they were about an inch away from winning. They had that USC game well under control. This Arizona State team may very well have been a top 10 team if you let them play a whole season out.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And the reason why is because, the quarterback play that they have in Jaden Daniels. In the Pac-12, when it comes to quarterbacks, we talk about Jaden Daniels, Kadon Slavis. So we talk about, Dorian Green Thompson. So we talk about those guys, but Jaden Daniels is right up there with them. And, Tom Herman's been doing an excellent job recruiting and bringing in talent. We've seen Frank Darby, one of their leading receivers. So Tom Herman is doing a great job. And
Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards. There you go. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, you get the Herman
yeah.
income.
So Herm Edwards is actually doing a great job there, which we've kind of acknowledged that, throughout our pod episodes. But I tell you what, Arizona has to go the route of, getting a young high school coach that can kind of change the culture, or try to get one of these, big fish in the NFL that just kind of recruit and just say, hey, I can kind of recruit and put you in the NFL. So I think that's the route that Arizona and that athletic program should go when it comes to, looking for its new coach.
Who are they going to get, though, if they go that NFL route like you're suggesting? Are you going to do better than Herm Edwards and Marvin Lewis and, Keith Pierce, which Arizona State's rolling with? Are you going to do better than that?
I mean, I think I think you could be optimistic, and I think you can think that you could do better, because it's a lot of talented coaches that, coach in the NFL, that's not really a head coach. They're coordinators, or, maybe they're a analyst on that particular team. I know Todd Bowles' name has been going out there as a head coach, but I know he said he wanted to, take the right job. So if Todd Bowles feels like, he can kind of come into the college realm and then kind of use that to boost him back up to a head coaching job in the NFL, then I think that's a great candidate. But I think it's a lot of guys that you can go that route with, especially in the NFL.
I mean, a couple of years ago, we're talking about Arizona was a contender for the Rose Bowl with Rich Rodriguez. I don't understand why these jobs seem to be just so gigs. I think Arizona State, it's not like you're dealing with rigorous academic standards like you do at some other schools that seem to kind of be mediocre in football. There's no reason for Arizona and Arizona State to ever be mediocre in football. I mean, you could maybe say like Arizona is not a huge talent-rich state, but I mean, I know they got their populous state. They're one of the fastest growing states in the nation right now. So the demographics are shifting. If you want to talk about a difference between how we historically look at Arizona State versus how we look at them going forward, I definitely think these are two prime schools that should be. I mean, you look at Oregon kind of grew up, right? Why is Arizona and Arizona State down? Like why like Arizona State, they seem to have figured it out with Herm Edwards to a point. But I'm talking about, like, shouldn't we expect these two programs to be in the hunt for the Rose Bowl at least, or like Pac-12 South title every single year?
Yeah, I don't think that's far-fetched at all. I mean, perfect example, just like you said. I think, Arizona, from a talent perspective, maybe it's not the rich hotbed that you go to recruit talent. But at the end of the day, you do have California there. You do have Nevada there.
Texas.
And then you have Texas there. And then now, if you go a little bit further, you kind of, have the Louisiana area there. So it's definitely talent, maybe not in the state, but it's definitely talented around the state. So I think if you're Arizona State and you're Arizona, you can definitely branch off and grab some of those recruits. And I tell you what, one of the biggest recruits that, came out of, the surrounding states in the last couple of years is, I know you had Tate Martell at Bishop Gorman. And I don't even know if he got a look from Arizona State. And maybe
Good point.
Had, but maybe he just didn't want to go there. But I think if you're one of those kids like Tate Martell and you're, around the surrounding Arizona State area, maybe you kind of want to go there to kind of put them on the map and kind of, play right away. So I think that's what Arizona State and Arizona can pitch to some of these kids. You can come in, you can play right away, and you can be a part of something new. Not go to something where you kind of, tacking on the tradition that's already there, but you can kind of build something new. So I don't know where Arizona goes from here, but me personally, if I was the AD, I would kind of look for, a high school coach up and coming, like a Art Browse, Gus Malzahn type, that can kind of be there for years and kind of change that culture, or go the NFL route and kind of get an assistant or coordinator in that regard. So,
or good news. You don't have to hire Art Briles or Gus Malzahn type. You can just hire Art Briles or Gus Malzahn.
There you go.
They're both available now.
And they're both available with Gus Malzahn getting, let go from Auburn. With that was a lucrative buyout. Did you catch that?
21 million? 21? They just don't care at Auburn. We'll talk about Auburn when we get to Auburn. I got some thoughts on that one. All right, Nevada fell to by the way, bookmark. I know I keep kind of mentioning this. I'm just throwing it out. Arizona State deep dive. Got to do that in the offseason. Got to do a deep dive on those programs in the offseason because I think that's fascinating that Arizona should be literally. Gronk talks about going there because he went to a pool party, had a great time at a pool party. It's not a hard place to recruit, you would think. So if I'm Arizona, I'm getting someone with a top of the line recruiting pedigree who's just going to get in there and recruit some damn good football players really quickly. So that's what I'm totally focused on a plus recruiter for my hire if I'm at Arizona. Nevada at San Jose State. Nevada falls 30-20. San Jose State had to do a little work in this one. The Spartans headed to the Mountain West Championship. Not used to this from San Jose State, but good season. They put together an unbeaten season so far, Rob.
Yeah. Good season so far. They're playing good ball, and just that they're a really good team.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing them next week against Boise State. All right, Saturday's action. Number 1 Alabama just cruises and takes care of Arkansas 52-3. I don't have a lot to say on this game, so we can compare and contrast it to our next game. The LSU Tigers go into the swamp, beat the Florida Gators 37-34. And Rob, here's the difference. When you look at it, and we talk about it being Florida fans, so we'll talk about Florida and Bama together since we're going to be talking about them together this week anyway. Alabama shows up and takes care of what's been a really feisty, tough Arkansas team. They just take care of business. No screwing around. They hammered them in the first half. The game was like their soul was gone by halftime. Florida got off to a slow start. You kept feeling like they were bouncing back. And as bad as they played, they had a field goal to tie the game at the end of the game all lined up. What do you see? How does Alabama maintain that level of focus and discipline that clearly eluded Florida on Saturday night? Because I think that's the difference between Alabama and the rest of America right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I got 2 words for that: Nick Saban. And we talk about Nick Saban being one of the greatest college coaches ever. And I think that's one thing that separates Nick Saban from, other particular coaches. It's just having that level of discipline. I know, Marco Wilson has been getting killed on social media, rightfully so. Not to the level of the death threats and everything that I've been seeing, but, as far as like it being a shot that costs your teammate Kyle Trask a Heisman Trophy and a shot that costs your team a shot to go to the college football playoffs, you would never see that happen under Alabama and Nick Saban. You just don't see those blunders or those mind farts that happens with other, schools. And I think that's one thing that we can say Nick Saban does a great job at that a lot of coaches don't really, have that under their control. So I think that's the difference that we're talking about.
Excellent performance by Alabama. They continue to look like the best team in America heading into the playoff. They got an SEC championship date with Florida on Saturday. Florida, LSU. I've watched enough of this LSU team this year to know that not only do they not play good defense, but their offense really didn't receive a lot of criticism because people are too busy knocking the defense. TJ Finley did not start. They gave the start to Max Johnson. And in case ESPN didn't inform you 17 times during the broadcast, that's Brad Johnson's son. Did you know that, Robert? Did you know that's Brad Johnson's son?
Just like you said, if I didn't know before, I definitely know now.
Can they get a guy to like count? Hey guys, we've told the audience this 7 like you need someone to like treat the announcers like it's your parents telling the same story, Be like, hey, Dad, you told me that already. You told me that 3 times. Like, just move on. But anyway, so Brad Johnson's son, Max Johnson, goes into the swamp and absolutely devastates Florida's hope for a playoff. by playing like a savvy veteran. I watched Mac Johnson play at different times during the year, and I haven't seen this. It felt like before when I saw him play, like he played extensively against Texas A&M a couple weeks ago when LSU could barely score a point, by the way. But it felt like he was just being plugged into the offense, and nothing was really built for him, and they were throwing him out there. This week, it felt like they had a plan coming into the game. They used his mobility. He's got sneaky. He's a sneaky fast quarterback. He's a lefty, sneaky fast mobility, and I was impressed. I thought he played well. I thought Florida had some sloppy blitzes. That one wide open touchdown before halftime. You saw two corners coming off the edge, and I'm not sure that in a secondary, Rob. How would you describe the coverage skills of Florida safeties this year?
It's horrible, and not only the cover skills of the safeties, but you can actually say the cover skills of the actual cornerbacks. And I know
so
Florida
corner blitzes is it, what would that be in your repertoire every 4 or 5 plays then?
It baffles me, and I know Todd Grantham has the moniker of Dr. Pressure, but sometimes you can't bring the pressure when you can't cover on the back end, and we've seen that time and time again with this Florida Gators secondary throughout the year. And I tell you what, their best cover guy is definitely hands down Kyrie Elam, right? But I've seen numerous occasions I've seen Todd Grantham in the defense bring Kyrie Elam off the corner with the cat blitz.
Come on.
I tell you what, I'm not blitzing my best corner. Have you ever saw Rex Ryan and the Jets blitz Darrelle Revis? Have you ever seen Jimmy Johnson and the Cowboys blitz Deion Sanders? You just don't see a team blitzing their best corner when you know the other guys are kind of suspect in coverage. So this Florida defense has kind of been, like the Achilles heel for this Florida team all year long, and it came crashing down with in LSU. You tip your hats off to him. Max Johnson came out.
Good game plan.
He looked poised. He looked like a savvy veteran going up against a Florida defense who can't get lined up. And I know that's been a thing, the last couple of weeks. Hey, Todd, what's going on with the Florida defense? You guys seem like you can't get lined up. And that was been a continuous thing week in and week out. And it came back to bite him in the butt. And that's kind of what happened in this game with LSU. Kyle Trask, he goes out there and everyone can say he threw 2 interceptions and one of them went for a pick 6. Okay, but at the end of the day, Kyle Trask has kind of been leading this team, and the offense has been leading this team week in and week out. This was a game where the defense should have came up and stepped and played big time, and they didn't. So if you haven't a not so good performance with the offense side of the ball that they can't really convert in the red zone, the defense has to step up, and the defense did not, and that's the reason why Florida lost this game, especially with Marco Wilson, tossing a shoe. But we're not going to get into that.
I'm not going to pile on Marco. He's heard enough of it. But I mean, the shoe thing is absolutely ridiculous. What the biggest disappointment for me? Look, at the end of the day, we invest our lives in caring way too much about what 18 to 22-year-old kids do on the field on a Saturday. The kid made a mistake, right? Like he a bad mistake. It's going to cost Florida a shot at the playoff. It wasn't the only reason why the Gators lost the game, but that doesn't mean you should excuse it entirely either. I mean, I think Mullen and Grantham should have ripped him off the field. I mean, if Nick Saban had that, and this is what we're talking about, Florida's trying to reach that Alabama level, right? So what are the differences? If Nick Saban saw a Crimson Tide player toss his shoe like that cost him that kind of penalty in that kind of moment, do you think he would have stayed on the field?
Yeah. I just don't see that.
Yeah, he would have been ripped off
under Nick Saban.
Yeah,
I just and that's the difference that we're talking about in regards to why has Alabama's team has been so disciplined compared to any other team, and it comes down to Nick Saban, and I think he's the key variable in everything. You don't see his players doing bonehead moves. You don't see the team being rattled by penalties. It's all discipline, and I think that's what Nick Saban brings. But I just would like to give time to Gator Vet. I follow him on Twitter. and he said something that, really kind of stuck with me in regards to the Marco Wilson and Florida losing to LSU. So I would just like to read it. Give me a minute on this one, Nick. So I would just like to read this one
Go for
verbatim.
it.
He said, "I never tear someone down for performance. A drop pass or a fumble is human. You can try harder next time, but throwing a shoe, I've never seen someone try their hardest and accidentally thrown a shoe to cost my entire program a playoff spot or my teammate the Heisman." And to me, that was spot on. That was spot on. And the reason why I say that is because we've seen Marco Wilson, kind of cause Florida the game early in the year with Texas A&M when, he got beat on a post pattern. But at the end of the day, the better guy he won the jump ball. He got beat. He should have knocked the ball down. He goes for the interception and he gets mossed essentially. So I'm not going to rattle Marco Wilson in that regards because at the end of the day, the best man won and he didn't make the play. However, when it comes to regards to throwing a shoe where, it's going to be an automatic penalty, it's going to be a guaranteed unsportsmanlike conduct, 15-yarder, no matter if you meant to do it, if you got caught up in the moment, whatever, it's going to be a flag no matter what. And I think that's what we have to look at in this particular incident. It wasn't a mistake. I just don't view it as a mistake. I view it as something that should never happen on the playing field. And regardless of if Dan Mullen said it wasn't, taunting or whatever the case may be, just, you can't do that. And everybody whether you're a high school athlete, whether you're a professional athlete, collegiate athlete, everybody know that's a no-no. That's like a unwritten rule where, you can't throw a defender's shoe or other team's shoe. Like, that's just a given.
I like that we're having a long conversation about throwing shoes. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen on a football field. It's one of the weird, when it happened in person too, because the camera angles with the fog, they were showing it like almost like a video game camera angle, right? And when he threw that shoe, there was like a split. It almost felt like 4 seconds in your brain, even though it was like 2. But before the flags all rained down, where I was like, did the refs miss that or something? Because I saw him throw it right away. And I just thought for a second, oh, maybe the fog helped him get away with it. Nope, it didn't. But I guess my point is this. Kid makes a mistake. Mullen, rip him off the field and let him have it in that moment. And part of it is if people saw Mullen freak out and the coaches giving it to him, maybe I don't need, it's already been set. Like, I think when you don't say anything and then you act kind of laissez-faire about it afterward, that's when Florida Twitter's going nuts on the kid and everything else. And I don't know. I think you got to show something to the team too, like that. Hey, this isn't going to be tolerated, guys. This could cost us. It's tough to win titles, and little things like that could cost you. And I think I really think you should talk about maybe sitting him down for at least a half of the SEC title game because of that. You got to send a message to the team. Maybe you don't have to do the full game, but at least a half. I would definitely do that because you got to send a message to the team. And sometimes you build discipline through moments like this where you use it as an opportunity to grow. Use it as an opportunity to grow for both parties, for both the team and for Marco Wilson going forward. So hopefully that's a good lesson learned and you move on. But disappointing loss for Florida. Bitter stinging for their fans. Kind of a callback to the 9/11 season where you lost to Tennessee on the last day of the year in the swamp, but with Rex Grossman there and cost them a shot at a BCS title game. That was a disappointing one as well. But anyway, you got Alabama next week. Once you calm down and regroup, okay, that's your second loss. Trask, the Heisman's still in hand. Go out and beat Alabama. Florida, go out and win the SEC title a year ahead of schedule. Go get it done against Bama, and I promise you the fans will feel better next Saturday if that happens. So disappointing, but on the flip side, we've been talking about Florida-centric. Flip side, Coach O needed this. this has been a rough year. I mean, coming in, this is a toxic week in Baton Rouge after that Alabama loss. Coach O needed this win big time, and he's at least got something positive to spin going into the offseason. And if you give that man anything to work with, we know he could build something. So I think that's a good start to the offseason for LSU. Hopefully they can follow it up with a halfway decent performance next weekend. And go out strong on the 2020 season. Good for the Tigers after a rough year. Georgia takes down Missouri with relative ease, 49-14. I expected a little more out of the Tigers in this one. I'm not going to lie, but the Bulldogs they sure look like a different team with JT Daniels at the helm, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, JT Daniels goes 16 of 27 for 299 and 3 TDs. And you know what you have in the backfield with James White and Zamir White, aka Zeus. So and then it's a healthy George Pickens on the outside. So it really seems like this Georgia offense is clicking on all cylinders late in this season, which is probably going to carry over to next season, and that's going to bode well for them. I know their defense is going to lose a lot of pieces, through graduation and a draft. So they're going to have to rebuild that side of the ball, but at least they have something going forward on the offense side of the ball. And it seems like they at least got their quarterback with JT Daniels.
How about that catch from Pickens before halftime?
Yeah, no one questions Pickens' talent. I think his biggest thing is,
Mental.
he has to stay on the field, whether it's due to getting banged up and nicked up with injuries, or just him being a hothead and kind of losing in it and kind of getting suspended or getting tossed for a half or not. So I think that's Pickens more so than the talent. And as a Florida fan, we kind of see that. We saw that kind of with Antonio Callaway. So as long as these guys can stay on the field, I think it bodes well for Georgia moving forward. And he's definitely going to be a first round or second round guy when he comes out.
All right, I'm going to stamp this as my most disappointing game of the day. I said before, I said on our pick show that this could be one of the best games of the day. North Carolina went down to Miami, absolutely pummeled the Hurricanes, 62-26. We both picked North Carolina in this game, and we picked them. I picked them, I know, because I think Miami, since that Clemson game, has played relatively average football, and they've been sneaking by average to bad teams. I know they crushed Duke last week when they came back. They've been off due to COVID issues. But that North Carolina running game, man, those running backs just chewed up the Hurricanes. Disappointing finish to an otherwise positive year for Miami.
Yeah, this was a total beatdown. And I'm going to throw out some stats for you, Nick, and you're going to understand why this score is 62-26. So total yards, North Carolina 778 versus Miami 314. No turnovers for the Tar Heels. Time of possession was 40-19. So you're pretty much double the Hurricanes up in time of possession. And when it comes down to first downs, 31-15. So that goes to show you that Carolina just dominated on both sides of the ball in the trenches. And that running game, the two-headed monster that, North Carolina have in the backfield, and we know what Sam Howell can do throwing the ball deep downfield. This North Carolina offense is hitting on all cylinders right now. And I tell you what, if Mac Brown can get some guys on that defense side of the ball and they can kind of play decent defense, this North Carolina team moving forward is going to be a real contender. And they're going to show you that they can kind of match up with the Notre Dames and the Clemson of the world once Mac Brown gets those guys in on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams had 5 touchdowns and over 500 yards rushing between the two of them. We know. I think that's the dirty secret to the Tar Heels is everyone thinks about Sam Howell. Well, Sam Howell's got it's good to you wonder why a young quarterback comes in and has some success. He can lean on a strong running game like that. So great performance by Carolina. Good season, I would say overall. Carolina, I would give them a lot of credit. I think they had a ton of hype coming into this season, and I would give them a ton of credit. I would say overall, I'm impressed. I think they lived up to the hype this year. What do you think?
I think they have. And I think, the one thing that they're lacking is definitely on the defense side of the ball. But that offense side of the ball, we know what they can do. But I just got a quick question for you, Nick. So which one would you throw the flag on? And we know which one got the flag thrown. Marco Wilson throwing the shoe. but we did see Sam Howell throw up the U and throw down the U, and didn't warrant a flag.
I'll say this back to the Florida game. Did you see when the LSU kicker made the 57-yard field goal? He went sprinting down the field doing the gator chop.
Yeah.
That wasn't flagged either. So I would put that. I would say that's probably worse than what Sam Howell did. So that wasn't flagged. So little to no consistency on that quote unquote taunting rule from the officials. It's a stupid rule anyway. I prefer no calls anyway.
So just to tie that back in with Dan Mullen's statement, does he have some type of credence from his statement that he made in regards to the taunting aspect of throwing the shoe?
Oh, because Sam Howell threw a U and Marco Wilson threw a shoe?
That was good.
Basically the same.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Basically the same thing.
But ultimately, I mean, if you're gonna say, you're gonna throw a flag unsportsmanlike conduct for taunting, I mean, what's the difference?
There's no consistency. There's no consistency in the call. I agree with you. That's a good point,
exactly.
but is none. But I would say throwing a shoe 20 yards downfield probably fits. If there's a rule, it probably fits that rule.
No, you're right. You're right about that one.
I would say that throwing a fucking shoe fits, yeah. All right, let's move on. Coastal Carolina had a scare at Troy. 42-38, though. The shots escape. Troy scored with a minute 20 left, and Coastal had to take the ball down the field. They ended up scoring with 35 seconds remaining on a 23-yard touchdown pass from Grayson McCall to Javion Haley. I don't know how to say that name. I'm sorry. But 42-38, Coastal Carolina escapes, stays alive with their unbeaten season. They have the Sun Belt Championship coming up next week. I believe they are playing Louisiana Raging Cajuns. That should be a fun one. That should be a good matchup right there. Rob, this Coastal Carolina team, we saw them take care of BYU last week. Kind of sleptwalk here a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of expected. There definitely was going to show a little hangover from that BYU performance. Just the notion of how big and monumental that game was for them in that program and for their season. So I think, this was definitely a great bounce back win. And we know this Troy team, they knocked off an LSU team under Ed O a couple of years ago. So we know this Troy team can play some competitive football. So I think they really came to play, and they really came and they came to win. But Coastal Carolina, they just kind of gutted it out at the end. But this Coastal Carolina is a great team, Cinderella story. I hope they, continue to win their games and go undefeated. So I'm really rooting for this Coastal Carolina program.
One more, and they finish the regular season. Well, that is the regular season, 11-0 regular season. Conference championship next. Chance to go 12-0 heading into the bowl game. Illinois falls to Northwestern, 28-10. Northwestern, good win. Big Ten West champs, going to play Ohio State next week. But end of the Lovie Smith era at Illinois. I'm not sure. They called it a mutual parting of ways. I'm not sure why this move is being made at this moment. If maybe Lovey really is leaving for something else, I don't know. But I know it wasn't a great season in Champaign, but you made so much progress last year. It felt like it was just starting to turn a corner. And I mean, I can excuse this season because I think this season was particularly hard. It was hard on everyone, but it was particularly hard on teams that don't have a lot of depth. And Illinois definitely doesn't have a high degree of depth like a Northwestern does right now. What do you think's going on there that Lovie Smith is out? And if you're Illinois, where are you looking?
Yeah, I think we're gonna put Illinois kind of in that same category as Arizona State. I think with Lovie Smith kind of being out, I know they said it's a mutual part in ways, but maybe Lovie Smith does have something else. Maybe he's going back to the NFL or something along those lines. But at the end of the day, I just think, why not have Lovie Smith or, just like I said before with Arizona State and Arizona, you bring in one of those veteran NFL guys to kind of, recruit, or you bring in someone on the youth side, like, up and coming high school coach or, up and coming, D2 coach, and to kind of build that culture and kind of, buy stock in him and give him years to kind of turn that program around. I don't think Illinois hits on a big time hire So I think that's kind of avenue they have to go with that. But just like you said, this Illinois program, they kind of showed, their resilience last season. And just like you said, this has been a hard season for every coach, not just, not coaches that doesn't have the talent and doesn't have the depth, but coaches that do have the talent and do have the depth. And we just mentioned that with LSU and Ed Orgeron earlier in the segment. So I think it's just been a hard year across the board. So if I was Illinois, I would definitely try to, stick with Lovie Smith a little bit longer, but maybe Lovie Smith has something, greener on the other side.
Yeah, something tells me it wasn't so mutual, but I don't know. I'm disappointed. I thought Lovey was building something there. Disappointed to see him go because I think it's great to have him in the Big Ten too. And you saw some of the success they're starting to have last year when they made that bowl game, pulled a couple big upsets over Wisconsin and Michigan State. Obviously, Lovie Smith will end up wherever he wants to, whether he wants to go back to the NFL or stick around in college. Hey, there's a coach for you out of Arizona if you want an NFL guy right there. But I think he came into a very difficult situation. He inherited a tough situation, and he's leaving that job as bad as this season was. It's a heck of a lot better than when he got there. He's leaving a lot more in the cupboard than what he inherited. I got a name for you that I like for the job. Lance Leopold, Buffalo Bulls head coach. Before Buffalo, he coached at Wisconsin Whitewater. And Wisconsin Whitewater, they won the Division III national championship 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think 6 times under him. 6 times. 6 out of 8 years. That's not bad. And one of the years he lost. One of the years he lost it. He lost in the championship game as well. So you got a guy who's a little familiar with the Midwest, who's had great success at Buffalo. Buffalo just finished 5-0. They're playing in the MAC title game for the second year in a row, I believe. No, or did they play in it last year? I thought they did. Or 2 years ago. I'm sorry. 2 years ago. But I feel like Lance Leopold would be a great hire, a great fit out of Illinois. But something tells me they're going to hire someone like Jim McElwain or something.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like, they might
be a retread.
They might go like the big name route, and sometimes the big name hires doesn't always work out. I mean, because the expectation is kind of attached automatically with the big name hire. So with some of these schools that really don't have the tradition, you kind of have to hire a up and coming guy that kind of build the culture with. So I think that's where Illinois should go. But just like you said, they probably going to go with, a big name hire or someone's kind of had that head coaching experience before on a big time level. But, hopefully they can get someone in there that can kind of be competitive. We've seen, Tom Allen at Indiana doing a heck of a job the last couple of years. We've seen, Matt Campbell with Iowa State. So if they can kind of get that guy in there and kind of stick with him, I think Illinois will be okay.
Pat Fitzgerald has Northwestern in their second Big Ten title game in 3 years. Tom Allen has turned Indiana around. They're a great football team now. Very good football team. Iowa State's playing great football, going to the Big 12 title game under Matt Campbell. There's no longer any excuse for any program to stay down for an extended period of time, and Illinois has been down for a very long time. They need to get somebody in there. Illinois can play much better football than what they're playing. They've done it in the past. They've made Rose Bowls in the 80s. This is not a program that doesn't know how to play football. Kevin Hardy came through there, Simeon Rice. There's been some great football players, obviously Dick Butkus back in the day, that have come through Illinois. Illinois can rise back up. They just need the right guy at the helm. I think if I'm Illinois, you've been a program that's been down. Go the Washington State route. Hire the Mike Leach type guy that's going to come in, chuck the ball around 80 times, have some fun football for the people to watch it. I guess that's like my suggestion for everything, though. Play offensive football. Play an interesting style of football. Either have the coach like Lovie Smith with the resume or play like a really interesting style of football with a nobody coach and go the other direction. So one of the two. All right, USC goes to UCLA, and this ended up probably being one of the best games of the day. UCLA had this game. UCLA was in control late. USC comes back, takes the lead 43-38, gets the win over USC gets the 43-38 win over UCLA to stay unbeaten and head into the Pac-12 title. No controversy as Colorado loses too. So I believe for the Pac-12 title next week, we're going to get Washington versus USC, despite that Washington-Oregon game being canceled. So, Rob, Trojans unbeaten. Good win over a good. First off, were you impressed by UCLA?
I was, and I really think Chip Kelly is coming into his own, and he's turning his program around. And you see what kind of talent he has on the field. Demetric Felton, 21 carries for 90 yards. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 30 for 36, 364, 4 TDs, 2 interceptions. But just he's another big time recruit that Chip Kelly is getting to kind of run his offense, kind of similar to that Dennis Dixon style, out at Oregon. When Dennis Dixon was out at Oregon, making the plays and having his Heisman, campaign and everything like that. So I think Chip Kelly is definitely going in his own. But Chip Kelly kind of ran into Kadon Slavish, probably the best quarterback in the Pac-12. So
yeah.
I think that kind of hurt UCLA. And then UCLA USC just has so many more weapons than UCLA. But, those weapons are getting there for Chip Kelly. So I think the better team won. But great game. Just like you said, this was probably one of the more better games of the weekend that we had, a marquee matchup. And kind of tradition-wise, USC and UCLA. I love those Bruin jerseys going against those USC jerseys. So I think that's one of the most storied rivals that we have, especially from a uniform standpoint.
That's been a good tradition that they've brought back in recent years. That they brought back those uniforms. They used to do that back in. You saw the old clips with when O.J. Simpson played back there. They used to do that, but when we were kids, they didn't do that as much, and they brought that back. I love that. You've seen USC jump up the polls in jump up the polls in the AP poll and the coaches poll over the weekend. They're 13th in both. But Rob, what about the playoff? What about the playoffs? Are the Trojans getting a little shafted on the playoffs right now? Should we be talking about Ohio State is 5-0 and they're holding a playoff spot right now? Why aren't we even discussing USC?
Well, I think one of those reasons is because USC at the beginning of the year had kind of two games where it came down to the wire that they had to kind of come and win, and they knocked off the Arizona schools in Arizona State and Arizona. So we see Kevin Sumlin out the door. So I think that's one of the reasons why we don't see USC getting no playoff talk, just because of the level of competition that they played. No other Pac-12 team other than Oregon that was kind of really ranked high. But, other than that, Colorado's been playing good ball, but not a lot of teams in the Pac-12. So they can kind of really look at the strength of schedule when they kind of analyze and break down the USC 5 wins on the season.
Let's talk about who's in front of them, though, because you got right now Northwestern, Coastal, Indiana, Oklahoma, Miami, Georgia, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Florida, and Texas A&M right now sitting in front of them in the college football playoff rankings, which will be updated. I have to think that obviously the Gators are going to fall. I have to think that USC has a good chance of jumping all the way from 15 to at least I think they could jump as far as 6 in this next poll and basically take Florida's spot, because you'd be jumping ahead of Iowa State. You'd be jumping ahead of 2-loss Georgia, 2-loss Oklahoma. I think that all makes sense. But I think if they jump that far, I think that's the committee saying, "Hey, USC, if you finish the season unbeaten, we'll slot you in ahead of Texas A&M." I think they'll slot them in ahead of Texas A&M at this point. So I'm not so sure that USC's playoff hopes are completely dead. So if USC goes out, I think it's going to be important that they got to make a statement win against Washington, though. If they look really good beating Washington, and so a little bit of chaos, falls in their favor, or really they got to be big Notre Dame fans. Notre Dame beats Clemson. Ohio State is probably going to get in anyway. But if Notre Dame beats Clemson, I think that could be the path for USC to get into the playoff. I think that's possible. Am I crazy for thinking that?
I don't think you're crazy. I mean, that's definitely, those variables definitely lay on the table. But once again, I just don't think the college football playoff values, USC strength of schedule that much because of the teams that they played.
What about Ohio State's?
I mean, we've seen Ohio State not really have the level of competition that they normally have within the Big Ten,
Yeah.
season. But at the end of the day, Ohio State toughest game was probably the Indiana game, and I'm fair to assume that you would think Indiana's a better team than USC at
Sure,
this
but
point, right?
no, not necessarily. I don't necessarily think that, but I think that I do think that. Let me ask you this: Ohio State's getting the benefit of the doubt because they've been there, done that year in and year out, and we know what type of program Ohio State is. USC is not getting the same benefit of the doubt, nor should it. But if they end up undefeated, I mean, it'd be pretty stupid to put a one-loss Texas A&M team ahead of an undefeated USC, right?
Yeah, I mean, but once again, I think you kind of look at the losses that Texas A&M had. They beat a Florida and they lost to Alabama.
Right.
So I don't think you can put a undefeated a USC team who really hasn't played the strength of schedule that Texas A&M played. I don't think you can slot them over Texas A&M if you ask me.
Would you argue that Texas A&M's loss to Alabama was their shot at the playoff and they didn't come through? Whereas USC
I,
hasn't gotten one yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that, but once again, I mean, if you're just comparing the two conferences, the Pac-12 and the SEC, I don't think it's comparable. Just from top to bottom with the teams and the scripted schedule, I really think having an all SEC schedule is probably one of the most hardest and difficult things that a team could do. So if you only lose one game out of that, I don't care what other conference goes undefeated unless you're Ohio State. And I think that's why Ohio State gets the nod over a one-loss Texas A&M because just like you said, they've been there, done that, and of course they have Justin Fields. Everyone wants
Right.
to see Justin Fields on a national platform.
If Notre Dame beats Clemson this weekend, though, and USC wins, Ohio State wins, the potential playoff field of Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, USC, I think that's about the dream playoff field that the committee could come up with in terms of TV ratings, the teams being spread out in the country. I think I don't know. I'm not shortchanging the Trojans. You might be right, but I'm not shortchanging their chance. I think they got a chance here. All right, we're running a little long on this, so I'm going to get through some of these other ones kind of quick here. Iowa 28-7 over Wisconsin. BYU 28-14 over San Diego State. Utah goes into Colorado, and this was a good game, but they end up winning 38-21. They took over in the fourth quarter. Brendan Rice, tell me about Jerry Rice's son real quick in Colorado.
Yeah, two big explosive plays. He actually kept them in there. But just like you said, Utah came in. Utah's defense actually, kind of like pretty much won them this game. And Colorado had a shot, but once again they lost. So of course USC is going to the Pac-12 championship.
That's awesome. Yeah. They good season out of Colorado. Brandon Rice, though, great plays. All right, Oklahoma State beat Baylor 42-3. Rutgers over Maryland 27-24. Good season for Rutgers. They're playing Nebraska next week to conclude. Nebraska falls to Minnesota 24-17. Penn State 39, Michigan State 24, Eastern Michigan 41, Northern Illinois 33, Ball State 30, Western Michigan 27, Louisville 45, Wake 21, UAB 21, Rice 16, Buffalo 56, Akron 7, Toledo 24, Central Michigan 23, Army 15, Navy 0. Rob, I gotta admit, I love the tradition of this game. I want to get more into it, but every time I watch, it's the double triple options. It's not my favorite game to watch the year on the field, but aesthetically with the tradition and all the uniforms and the going back and forth, the pregame and postgame traditions. I mean, this is still one of the best games in college football every single year, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right about that. And just with the tradition and how sick were those uniforms?
Oh, loved it.
I tell you what, I wish I could take one of those Army uniforms and throw it up on a mannequin, in my man cave and just kind of have that over there. But those uniforms are sick year in year out, and just like you said, the tradition of this game is it's always a good game to kind of throw on and have watching, when they play. But Army, they kind of dominated for the most part in this particular game, and it seems like they normally do. But it's definitely a good game for America, and one game that you definitely have to make your way out to. And I know we've been talking about going out to a game to watch Army and Navy play.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely on my college football bucket list. But good win by Army. Navy could not get it going offensively. Man, they had a fumble that they could have picked up and ran in. Navy in the second half there. It was tough break for Navy. They just couldn't. The ball didn't bounce their way on that day. Another foggy game, by the way. Tough to watch that in the fog too. Memphis 30, Houston 27. Florida State 56, Duke 35. Good win for the Seminoles. Get back in the W category there. Tennessee 42, Vanderbilt 17. Sarah Fuller, a couple extra points, huh?
Yeah. So she continues the tradition of female kickers kicking extra points. So I think that was a good sight for her and for that program, especially with the firing of Derek Mason. So I think that was definitely good news for that Vanderbilt University and the Vanderbilt School and women across, to see her kick the extra point. So tip your hats off to Sarah Fuller.
It's crazy to me how much controversy that's generating online. And it's the same people that they go nutso over everything. But it's like, there's, it's a woke publicity stunt, da-da-da-da-da. Dude, yeah, can they find someone else to kick the extra point? Yeah, they had a guy kick a field goal. They had a guy kicking field goals. It's a cool story. Just roll with it, man. Like, I don't know why we can't get excited about it. Just be excited about the one thing. Now, I did see an interview with her the week after her first game where she's talking about standing up and giving halftime speeches, which I don't know. I didn't play college football, but I'm pretty sure kickers don't give halftime speeches. I'm pretty sure kickers who joined the team 5 minutes ago definitely don't give halftime speeches. So if that's true, that's a little strange. But I don't see how anyone could treat this as anything other than it's a cool story. And I mean, she steps in, she makes a kick, no problem. I mean, you've seen like soccer goalies have very strong legs traditionally. I mean, you see, like, every time you watch the World Cup, you think about how far those guys just boot the ball across the field, no problem. And then you sit there, and if your team has a bad punter, you're like, can we get one of these guys? What the hell? But I don't understand why it's generating any level of real controversy. Do you get it?
Yeah, I don't get it at all. But at the end of the day, it's a great story, cool story for Sarah Fuller. And when she, kind of kicked off, everyone kind of had backlash where, oh, well, she didn't kick it that far. It was a squib kick. I would rather see her kick field goals or extra points. Okay, well, fast forward. She kicked 2 extra points. So, okay, yeah. What are you – oh, now you want to see her kick the field goal.
Tennessee didn't rush. They didn't rush. I saw a video where they said Tennessee didn't rush the extra point. Get the hell out of here, guy. You just grasping at straws at this point. Just enjoy something.
She hit 2 extra points now, so now it's going to be, okay, well, I need to see her kick a field goal. And if she kicks a 30 or 40-yard field goal, they're going to say, oh, I want to see her kick a 50. There's always going to be something. It's always going to be a little controversy surrounding this, but it's a great story, not only for her, but, just for the women that's kind of want to say, hey, now I'm interested in kicking PATs and field goals. So I just think it's a cool story, and all the controversy should just die down, especially after this week with the extra points that she kicked. So let's just roll with it.
It's a good story.
It's a great story.
Good story. Leave it at that. Don't overcomplicate. Don't overcomplicate a simple thing. She's just kicking extra points on a pretty terrible football team. Vanderbilt doesn't have much going for it. Fine. Even if it is a publicity stunt, fine. It's interesting. It's a good story. Good story. All right. Boise State 7, Wyoming 9. Appalachian State 34. Georgia Southern 26. TCU 52. Louisiana Tech 10. Auburn beats Mississippi State 24-10. Gus Malzahn Sunday afternoon ends up getting fired by the Auburn Tigers. I was a little surprised to see it, considering they paid the man $21 million to walk out the door. I know that Auburn fans go crazy about the inconsistency that they've experienced under Malzahn. I get it. You see yourself as a program that should be a perennial power year in and year out. It's extra tough when Alabama is just nearly perfect all the time. But Gus Malzahn, the heights of the Malzahn, you might have had a lot of lows, but the heights are pretty high. We're talking about a guy that was relatively competitive with Saban year in and year out, and actually was one of the few teams that can actually beat Alabama with semi-regularity in the Saban era. If I'm another school looking for a coach right now, hey, Gus Malzahn, he might maybe has something stipulation where he can't coach for a year or two with that kind of money. But how are you not hiring Gus Malzahn? How is he not getting snapped up as quick as possible?
Yeah, just like you said, Nick, with Gus Malzahn, being fired from Auburn, I don't think, he's going to be out there waiting for a job for a long time. I think he's going to get snatched up. You've seen what he's done. He has a national championship under his belt. We've seen what his offenses can do, and we've seen what he can do on the offense side of the ball. So I don't think Gus Malzahn is going to be, out there, searching for a job for too long. And if he is, he's probably just taking some time off. But just like you said, I have any job to pay me $21 million to walk out the door. I'll take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Auburn's a crazy place. That being said, if you're firing Gus, you better have it's the Tom Herman thing. You better have something in hand. I have a feeling they have something in hand. I have a feeling that something is Hugh Freeze.
And I think that will be a great hire. We've seen what Hugh Freeze did at Ole Miss. We've seen, Hugh Freeze kind of be a thorn in the side to Nick Saban. So I think if you're an Auburn fan, that's someone that you'll probably want to go out there and kind of, have. And I tell you what, the quarterback that Hugh Freeze was working with this year from Liberty actually was a transfer from Auburn to Malik Willis. So I tell you what, like how cool does that sound if Malik Willis can kind of transfer back? I don't know if that can happen. I don't know if he can enter the transfer portal twice, but if that happens, that would be pretty cool for both of those guys.
You giving up on Bo?
I don't. I've seen highlights the highs and lows of Bo Nix, but I tell you what, I really think Bo Nix just coming in. I think that Oregon win as a true freshman really kind of, hyped them up. But I really haven't seen the level of consistency from Bo Nix week in and week out.
That's cool. Well, Bo Nix, maybe he gets under a guy. I know that Hugh Freeze did good things with his quarterback, so maybe Bo. I mean, not that Gus Malzahn does a bad job with quarterbacks, but maybe Hugh Freeze can breathe some new life into him. It'll be interesting to see, but I'm wondering what will happen with Gus Malzahn going forward. I'm interested to see where he ends up landing. Virginia Tech 33, Virginia 15, Stanford 24, Oregon State 27, Oregon State 24, New Mexico 49, Fresno State 39, and Hawaii defeats UNLV 38-21 to wrap up college football Saturday. That's your college football wrap up for today. Thank you for joining us. And before we exit, a word from our sponsor, Coach Paint.
American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly telestrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.